Hello, welcome to week 2 of the Current Review podcast. This week there is a ton of stuff to discuss, including EV depreciation, EV repairs, as I'm currently going through one right now, our EV deal of the week, and the Tesla Robotaxi event, which I think we both successfully predicted. David and I are excited to talk this week, and I think just to kick things off, EV depreciation. Today, there are more deals than ever, and there was a recent study saying that a lot of EVs are going to come around to about the $25,000 mark. So, start off, David, what are the implications of these lower EV prices in the used market?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of worry and criticism about buying new EVs, and I think it's warranted. Yeah, there was a couple studies done recently that shows EVs are depreciating faster in the first year or two
Mhm.
than a non-EV, and the value that I saw was up to 50% in some cases, which is really
Yes,
extreme.
I've seen over that in some.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think that's the double-edged sword of the subsidies, right, and the EV incentives. Because with all these incentives going in, I think it's sort of lowering the MSRP off the bat, right?
Mhm.
$8,500 right off the price tag right there is taken off, and as EVs are coming down, right, some of them are in the 50,000, some are even starting at like 45. You take 8,500 off of that, I mean that's a big chunk. That's almost it's almost 20% right there, right?
100%.
And already, I do know, I think there was a bit of a glut in that a lot of companies were creating a lot of EVs. They were unsuccessfully selling them off of car dealerships. And so, like, they were discounting prices right there. And so, I think in the last year or two, it's fair that the depreciation was really high and there's some concerns. But on the other side, great deals if you're buying used, right? Really, really great deals. We're getting into that affordability range. I think you had mentioned we're going to see a $25,000 EV soon, right? I think that
Mhm.
was that was originally, like you were saying, from the Elon Musk attempt at the Robotaxi. Originally, they were going to go for what, like a sub 30, $25,000 vehicle. Instead, they did this Robotaxi thing, which we'll talk more about that later. But
Yes.
but yeah, I think that's the sweet spot. I've heard from a lot of people in dealers. I don't know if you've heard this as well, but $300 a month in the monthly payment is sort of like the target.
Mhm.
$300 or less per month, which I think ends up being around that $25,000 mark, right?
Yes. And I think it's especially when you have the used EV tax credit. I think this Inside EVs article has a great point. Is once you're also under 25,000, you get that $4,000 EV incentive, and that's a big deal for buyers as well to get under that magic $25,000 mark. But like this is showing, like a lot of these vehicles are converging around that $25,000 mark used, and this also creates a really interesting thing, and that's particularly that there's very different vehicles you can now get for around that $25,000 mark. Like you can get a Model 3 Performance for around that price. You can also get a Ford Mustang Mach-E. You can get Volkswagen ID4. There's a bunch of vehicles that are very different vehicles for very different needs and desires, and they're all about the same price, which is really good for the consumer because there's just so many options. But I think you also have a really good point about new vehicle sales, and that's a tax credit because right now, if we have a Tesla that's $40,000, obviously probably wouldn't be exactly that price with destination fees and everything, but just say 40,000, and then with a $7,500 tax credit, you're looking at 32.5. And now the tax credit's available point of sale. You get $7,500 off the price of the car you're paying, and a lot of people qualify. If it's a household that makes under $300,000 a year, they'll qualify, and that's a very few people make above that amount of money. And plus, if you're making that much money, you're probably not going to be buying a Tesla Model Y anyways. Maybe you would, I don't know, but maybe Mercedes or BMW or something more expensive that wouldn't qualify for the tax credit. But that point aside, if the car's 32.5 new, that's what you're paying, the car's automatically used going to be worth about 30 grand, because
Yeah.
if you could buy a new one for that price, it's like, who cares what the MSRP is? What are people actually paying for it? And we see
Yes.
this in a lot of vehicles, and we also see this with like manufacturer incentives too, like Hyundai and Kia. They're offering $7,500 off their electric cars. So that's why a lot of these cars are depreciating a lot, is just because frankly there's more incentives on them. And same thing with leases. So like a VinFast, you can get a crazy lease for $199 a month. Well, the car's 50,000 brand new, but who's even going to pay 40,000 for that used when you can literally lease one for 199 a month and buy it out at the end of the lease for like 20 to 25K.
Mhm.
So that's kind of where I'm coming from. So I think we have to take a really good look at what are the incentives, and then yeah, that kind of explains why they're going to depreciate a lot.
Yeah, and and it's crazy that there's so many good deals for cars that are very lightly used, right? I
Hmm.
mean, you were just showing like cars from 2021, right? And that was only 2, 3 years ago. And I'd say I would guess that they probably don't have more than 30,000 miles on them, right? If
Hmm.
30, if that much, because I think right now, again, because infrastructure is a bit on the light side, most people are just driving it around town, right?
Hmm.
I know that you can, I've done lots of road trips and we talk a lot about being able to do road trips, but for the most part, most people are just driving around town. So it's very, very light use, right? They're
Hmm.
going to be in extremely good condition. I think, that's the upside to high EV depreciation.
Yes, 100%. And some vehicles like these Model S's are probably driven a little bit more than some of these other options, but like these cars were around $90,000 brand new. Obviously, Tesla lowered the prices recently, but you can now get these in the low 40s, which is pretty insane depreciation wise. There's cars that are crazier than this, like specifically the Mercedes EQS. Those were worth about 110 brand new, and now you can get them for around the same price as Model S. So that depreciation level's a lot higher. But yeah, I mean, just for someone in the used market right now, you got plenty of options that are really good. And yeah, I think it should definitely be looked into. And I think also the used market is a good signifier of just the auto market in general, because a lot of people do buy used.
Yeah, and like we were saying is with the large number of models and different OEMs that are available in the used market, um, you can you can really go after like a brand that's got high quality, like Mercedes you were mentioning, right? I
Hmm.
know one of the early criticisms of Tesla was, oh, like this is a $60,000 car, but it doesn't feel like the interior feels like a $60,000 car, right?
Hmm.
Well, I guarantee you, Mercedes has, for a $110,000 car, put in the effort to make it a really nice vehicle on the interior, and you're getting it
Hmm.
for half that. I mean, that's, I think, an incredible deal, right? If that's what
Yes.
was holding you back, there's just so many more different types of cars, different types of quality builds out there. I don't think some of these early adopter issues are much of a concern now.
I totally agree. And so many good, like even Audi e-tron, they do have some reliability issues, so I wouldn't totally recommend one. But yeah, if you do want like a really high-end car like that, it's like you can get those easily for under $25,000 now, which is just pretty crazy to think about because that was 80, $90,000 new. Yeah, so great
Yeah.
options. But now transitioning to a slightly different topic is EV repairs. And this
Mm.
is something that I'm going through now. And this is something that is a bottleneck with EVs, but I don't think it has to be this way. I think this is kind of just how it's set up. And I guess first, you have a Rivian, which is a
Yeah.
very interesting car because it's on a unibody construction. So did you ever have any repairs with this yet? Or
I
have
did.
you? Okay.
Fortunately, about almost exactly a year ago, I had a dent from an incident in the passenger side rear by
Mm,
the tailgate. And like you mentioned, it's one big unibody piece.
yeah.
And just the way they designed it, in order to replace that part, they had to take the entire vehicle apart just for that one little dent. And also with the at the time, even just a year ago, the amount of parts that were available for repairs, they were still kind of ramping up their supply chain. And so I was out of a car for about 6 weeks, and I was told actually that was a pretty fast turnaround because I happen to have a
Wow.
friend that works in the service department, and he helped track and accelerate the parts a little bit. But
Wow.
fortunately, the insurance covered everything. But I will say, when I was talking to the adjuster and everything, he was saying, oh, to a normal vehicle, this is about twice as much in terms of
Wow.
repair costs, both labor and parts and all that. And we were talking, and the thinking was, and I think this is going to be true as EVs get a longer history, is that as the parts and the types of repairs and the accidents become more known, and people find maybe even like more interesting ways to repair it without having to take the whole thing apart, right?
Hmm.
That's the recommended way, but I think over time, people eventually start to figure out ways where you don't have to you can sort of work around some of the things and do things a little bit more efficiently.
Hmm.
It just requires a lot more history and a lot more
Yeah.
people working on these cars, right?
Hmm.
And so right now there just isn't a large population, not a ton of parts available. And so it's one of those things where I believe over time, you'll get enough of the economies of scale benefit and
Hmm.
the cost of repair will start to go down. But for now, in the time being, it is a bit more expensive. I think most of them are aluminum bodies. And for instance, I know
Yep.
aluminum bodies aren't necessarily brand new at this point, but they're relatively new. And
Hmm.
there aren't a ton of techs that know how to work on aluminum bodies, right? So that's just
Yep.
one. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, because I think my situation right now is not great, and I'll actually share what happened. So this is my car. It's a 2021 Model 3, and I
Ooh,
was driving through a parking lot. Someone was pulling out of a spot and drove into me. Not great. The other driver accepted full responsibility, which was good, but basically still got some marks on the car. Mirror kind of came off, and it was mainly this left door and this body panel right here. And the story with getting it repaired is first, State Farm, we sent some pictures of the car, and they were like, all right, this is going to be $6,000. That's how much they agreed to pay in the beginning. And I was like, okay, well, let's see what some other independent shops. And I got two quotes, one for 8,000 and one for 11,000 to fix. So already the two numbers were kind of far apart. So we decided to go with the less expensive shop. And right now, we just got a notification back that the total repair price is up to $17,000
wow.
because Tesla's certification for this vehicle to be Tesla certified repaired. Keep in mind, this is third party shop, but it is Tesla certified. There's a lot of like hoops you need to go through, and like right now, they'll basically the whole this entire area of the car is just disassembled and sitting in a shop, and it's just something to really consider with these vehicles that you don't want to get in an accident because yeah, it will take a long time. So they're currently expecting the finish date will be like November 7th. The car's all ready to be repaired. They have all the parts ready, so it's not even that constraint. It's just the fact that insurance and the repair shop need to see eye to eye on a price. And in the meantime, I'm driving a Polestar, so it's a rental through Hertz, so I'm not necessarily complaining, but it is still just kind of a mess of an entire situation. And yeah, I mean, I think we definitely got to be honest here that this is one areas where we got to see some improvements.
For sure, for sure. Out of curiosity, how hard was it to find a certified shop
Not hard.
that it
No, at
wasn't
least
hard?
in Charlotte, it was not. There were
Okay.
multiple.
There were multiple options. I
Yes.
mean, that's the other really important thing is that you have multiple options. Me in Maine, I mean, fortunately, the one shop that was Rivian certified in Maine, A, wasn't very far away. It was only like 20, 30 minutes away. But they don't try to hold you over, if that makes any sense, because they're the
Hmm.
only shop. I've heard some horror stories about shops and the differences in prices and them lowballing to get the job and then coming back later and knowingly having to jack up the price, right? Which is kind
Yeah.
of dishonest. But
Hmm.
that happens with any vehicle, right? Like that happens with any vehicle. It's just kind of body shops and that whole business and industry, how they operate.
Yeah.
I'm sure, a really, really hard business in general, but
Hmm.
I think particularly with EVs right now, it's just in a very early days stage. And I
Hmm.
think eventually everyone will get better at it. It'll become a lot more transparent. And that's also where I think just better insurance data and just better technology in general will make repair costs a lot more transparent and easier for everyone to deal with because no one likes to have an accident. I bet you were
Hmm.
not having a good time, and neither was the other person.
Yep.
But they happen, right?
Yeah. And I think the other thing is I could have also done paintless dent repair if I just took the insurance money. But then I would have had to fix that whole side view mirror, and I don't even know how much was damaged on there, and that
Hmm.
could be 600 to maybe a little bit more money. But then I was doing math because paintless dent repair would have been like 3,500. Original estimate they would have given me would have been 6,000, and I'm not sure if everything would have been fixed with paintless dent repair. I'm sure it would still been kind
Mm,
of noticeable. Then I was thinking with like, well, if they're putting me in a rental car while it's getting fixed and then I get some diminished value, which I already agreed to some diminished value, I was like, maybe, this might be the route to do. But Yeah, I think it's just kind of crazy that when the original estimate's 8 grand and then it goes
Hmm.
up to over double,
Yeah,
is
that's
it's a huge difference. And yeah, it's not great
yeah.
for everyone involved. Maybe the shop, maybe they like getting the extra labor in.
Who knows? I mean, I think they're getting paid either way, right?
Hmm.
But it'd be curious with the paintless dent repair. Did that come with calibration? Because it looked like that hit the side camera, right?
Yes, side camera still worked, interestingly,
Oh, okay.
but I'm
It,
not
it probably
sure.
needs it probably needs to be recalibrated though, right?
Yeah, or something. I don't know because I think the one thing that I thought was weird, I brought it to the paintless dent repair place, and the guy was like freaking out. He's like, "Oh, he's like, there's high voltage going through the car," and I'm like, "Well, no, dude. The high voltage is isolated in certain areas of the car where there's these giant wires that are orange that you can see where it is." And
Yep.
he was like kind of nervous about working on it. I'm like, okay, I don't think this guy really knows his stuff when it comes to
Yeah.
EVs, and do I trust him on the vehicle?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't know.
With comments like that, I would get worried. But obviously, I think
It's just
by
a body
now,
too.
yeah, there are safety modes for techs to work on it because they
Yeah.
know that they're. But clearly, he didn't know that, and that is a worrying indicator.
Yeah, because
But
even if there would be
yeah,
any wires, it would just be low voltage, like any other
yeah,
car. Like
yeah, yeah,
there's not a high voltage cable in the door.
yeah. No, yeah, yeah, totally. It's interesting. When I was thinking about the sensors and the cameras, if you hadn't done a Tesla certified repair, do you
Hmm.
think if there was any issue with like any autonomous driving capabilities or those systems afterwards, if they would have given you a hard time about it, about not getting a Tesla certified repair?
I would think so for sure.
Yeah.
So I had a windshield replacement on my old Model 3 last year, and the interior climate sensor wouldn't work right after I got the windshield repair because there's the temperature sensor. So like I couldn't remote start the car because it didn't know what the temperature was. It just had no idea. And
Oh.
then basically to control like to get cool or warm air, you either had to put it on low or high
Oh.
temperature. And it was really weird. And then I brought into Tesla, they did some stuff, and then I ended up getting the repair or the windshield company to pay for the repair, and it was like $200. But yeah, because I'm going to be more cautious about bringing it to like a non-certified place.
Yeah.
So just
I
something to
think I
consider.
think that's the thing these days is the cars are getting a lot more computerized and there's a lot more
Hmm.
consideration. So I think some of these shops that are used to, just taking out the windshield and putting it back in and being done with it,
Hmm.
the days of that are kind of gone now because these cars are a little bit more sophisticated. So that's the other thing. But I have to say, I mean, the techs are getting, I think the younger techs are getting more savvy and they know these sort of things. And so I think it's just one of those things where again in the industry there's a bit of turnover happening, there's new stuff coming, and the newer folks know a little bit more about what they can do and what they can't do depending
Hmm.
on the technology that's in there, and the other ones are like, oh no, it's not as easy as just popping a dent anymore.
No, not at all. Yeah, one part of me wishes I just had like a beater Chevy Bolt or just something like that. Just something you pick up for like $10,000, and that's like you get like an old fender bender. You're like, the car still
Yeah,
drives. That's all that counts.
it will be interesting to see how these age,
Hmm.
and what is a beater EV going to be, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it is going to be a beater Bolt like you mentioned, or I mean, I'll say the Nissan Leafs.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there'll definitely be one.
Those if they're still around,
Yeah.
they're interesting, but yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it would be nice to have something that if you got like a little dent or something, like if you got a dent on like the back bumper or something, you could just pour some boiling water on there and just put a plunger on, just something that you're just like, if it works, that's great. If it doesn't, it's still my Nissan Leaf I bought for $3,000.
exactly. Like, oh, no harm, no foul, or whatever, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, it's basically like a glorified golf cart, but it's amazing. People love golf carts.
Yeah, definitely. It would be kind of fun if you
Anyways,
got like a Fiat 500e or something and just like removed the doors and just made it a golf cart.
yeah, I mean, it's almost the same size. If anything, I don't know if you've seen, but some of the golf carts have gotten really sophisticated. They've
Yeah, it's
got like
crazy.
they've got like, 4 to 6 seater golf carts that are like lifted and can go, decent distances and stuff. And it's just yeah, it's pretty insane these days. But
Definitely. Speaking of golf carts, I thought this would just be an interesting transition because it reminded
yeah.
me of something. So the new Fiat 500e, because normally we talk about good EV deals, I want to share like a bad EV deal that you should not buy, and that's the new Fiat 500e. And don't get me wrong, I think this is a really cool car. Like it's fun. I bet it would be pretty fun for like city driving. But you see, there's one issue with this car, and the fact is, it is extremely overpriced. And I think if we can find the lease deals on it, I forgot where it was on the website. But basically, this car starts at 32.5, which is pretty expensive for something that has, I think, around 150 miles of range and makes
Oop.
about 118 horsepower. For some reason,
And
I
it's
can't
tiny.
find it. Yes, it's very tiny, 2 doors, or maybe I think it's 3 doors actually. But this is the deal on it. So the lease deal for this vehicle, because the car has been having pretty poor sales,
Hmm.
is I guess this is a slightly better lease, but it's still 199 a month with about 2,700 down, which
Hmm.
is just kind of more on the expensive side. Because keep in mind, like you can
Yeah.
get a VinFast VF8, not praising that vehicle or anything, but that's also 199 a month, with
It's a
zero
lot more
down.
vehicle. It's a lot more vehicle and a lot more. It's a lot more useful, right?
Yes,
Than this car.
and this one, and keep in mind, this lease is only 5,000 miles a year, so that's like very, very minimal driving. Because most leases are normally around like 10,000 miles a year.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just an interesting car that's not the
I wonder
best
who they're
deal.
targeting. I mean, again, this feels like one of those brands, very European. It very much
Hmm.
fits like a European target audience and a very European consumer, but I don't think it's really fit for an American audience, right?
Yeah, and it's so
Um,
unfortunate because it is a cool car. Like if you live in a city, like I think this is really cool because I used to have a Mini Cooper SC, loved it. It was a
mhm,
really fun car. And I would assume this would also be pretty fun, even though it makes a little bit less horsepower. But like, if we look, like, just say you wanted to lease this one with a
mhm,
reasonable amount of miles. So if we go here, we go to your vehicle, estimate finance, just see what we're looking at.
mhm.
For some reason, it's not showing me a lease.
Lease option.
Anyways, that's kind of weird. But regardless, it's like if you know, 37
Wow,
6 for this.
37. Yeah,
It's just kind of ridiculous. I just don't see a huge audience buying it for that much when you could literally get a new Model 3 for that price with the tax credit or even
yeah,
less.
yeah. I mean, but at least they're trying, and I think this is the time where car brands are out there just putting all sorts of their attempt at EVs, you know.
Mhm.
So I guess kudos to them for putting something out there, but I think I agree. I mean, this doesn't make any sense from my point of view for an American audience. Hell, like the Hyundai Kona, right, is
Mhm.
probably a much better deal, and it's got a
Yes.
lot more usefulness to it,
Yeah.
overall. And
And right
it's
now,
probably a similar size, maybe a little bit
yes.
bigger.
Yeah, a little bit bigger, a little bit more space. At least it has three back seats. But yeah, if we just look at this 36-month lease, 10,000 miles a year, um, you're still paying 3,800 down and 365 a month
65.
for this.
That's a lot.
That's insane. Like I
That's a
just don't
lot.
see like you can literally lease a new Model 3 without any incentives at all just from Tesla for like I think it's 3,000 down with 299 a month.
Yeah.
So,
And Fiat's not even that strong of a brand here in the US. I mean, it's
no.
got a bit of a following, but it's not quite the same. It only just came back to the US in my recent memory, only, was it like a decade and a half ago or something like that, right? So,
Yeah. It's
but
unfortunate
yeah,
because I
yeah.
really was excited for this car to come to the US market, but I mean mid to upper $40,000 range with options and almost 400, I mean over $400 a month lease if you include the down payment is frankly insane for that
Mhm.
vehicle. But with the previous Fiat 500e, they had some pretty crazy lease deals appear kind of later on, and who knows? Maybe if this car doesn't really sell that well, we might end up seeing like I think if you could get like under 150 a month, probably less than that, probably under 100 a month, I would probably do it just
Yeah.
because that wouldn't be a lot of money for a pretty interesting car. But yeah, I just like right now I just don't see anyone buying it. And no one really is. And the car has been paused in production for I think about 6 weeks now. So
Well, and that kind of probably shows you, I think it's because of lack of demand to some extent. I
mhm.
think I would suspect, I don't know for sure, don't know anyone over at Stellantis or anything like that, but I would suspect that they priced it as if with the same margin expectations that they do with the regular vehicles. And I think
Probably.
you know, if you want to get into the EV game, unfortunately, you're going to have to try to sell it at cost or a bit of a loss, like Ford and GM are doing, and
Hmm.
then hope that you can lower those costs very quickly over time. It's almost like, for me, this reminds me of the semiconductor industry. When I was working in semiconductors, they would put out chips really, really early because it was all about speed of innovation and getting like the next architecture or the next technology in terms of nanometer spacing out there as quickly as possible, but the yields would be terrible, right? Like the
Mm.
yields would be like 50%. And so you're
Wow.
taking maybe like a loss on some of your early chips. But
Hmm.
Intel, back in the heydays of Intel, was really, really good at getting that yield up to 95% within like a year or two, just through process
Hmm.
improvement. And that's where they made their money and that's where they beat everybody. So I think that's the name of the game in terms of EVs. If
Hmm.
Ford and GM are going to be successful, and I think this is what they're doing right now, is trying to figure out how to make EVs in a more affordable way, right? Like
Yes.
that's the only way that they're going to compete. The Teslas, the Rivians, the Lucids have an advantage because they're EV from the ground up, right?
Hmm.
And granted, they outside of Tesla, Rivian and Lucid are still losing money, I think, per vehicle. But you can see their pace of improvement. Rivian says that they're going to be profitable per vehicle in the next couple of months. They had originally said, I think, by the end of this year, but maybe that might have been pushed out a little bit. But
Hmm.
that's super fast for a brand new company, you know?
Yep.
And I think that's how people are going to win in the EV game for sure. Yeah.
Definitely. And I think the other thing too is like just improving manufacturing because this was a big
Yeah.
deal with GM. I think it was 24% fewer parts in the new Cadillac Lyriq, which is really good. So we can kind of
Yeah.
see that they're probably, I would say, even taking some manufacturing techniques from some of the newer guys like
Yep.
Tesla, Rivian, and all them, because that's how you make EVs more affordably. You improve your manufacturing, fewer parts, get them out faster. But yeah, because I think, especially and also with like some of these cars, you just can't expect them to perform, at least sales wise, like internal combustion, because it is different. And the other thing, too, to think about that I didn't mention about the Fiat 500e is all these electric cars, no matter where they're built, they will get a $7,500 leasing incentive.
Mhm.
And let's just say if we're doing a lease on some entry level car, it's like $300 a month. Let's just say a gas powered Fiat 500, just purely hypothetical. $500 a month, or sorry, $300 a month. Never mind. $300 a month times 24 months. That means that'll be $7,200. That would be the total lease price payments. That's $7,500, which is a lot of money. That will cover like 24-month lease on a $300 a month car. And that just means the lease prices can get cheaper. You can just eat that tax credit as most of your revenue. And then, yeah, you just got to think about this a little bit differently. And some cars like VinFast do see that because they give dirt cheap leases. They're probably not making a lot of money, but that tax credit's making up for a big percentage of their revenue on the car leases. So Fiat, I think, could do this because a car doesn't have a big battery. It's not a lot of body. It's not a lot of cost for shipping. It's going to be less than a traditional like SUV sedans, thing like that. So yeah, I think that's really interesting because I think that lease price could definitely get down a lot, and they're probably approaching this more like a gas car,
Yeah.
and you're just not going to get record profits on something like that.
No, you have to sort of take a bit of a chance early on to
Hmm.
get people to sort of find out how great of a car it is, if it really is. I
Yeah.
haven't had a chance to drive it, but I know Fiats are known for being really fun cars. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Because even at like $100 a month on a 24-month lease, that's $2,400. You add on the tax credit, that's like
yeah,
$9,900. And the car, if it's around 30K, that's like 33% of the price of the car. That would seem like it would make sense on a car lease. Like that seems like a pretty reasonable lease for 2 years. It's 33%. Um, yeah, that
yeah.
would be interesting. It would be interesting to look at the financials on that. Fortunately, we don't have time for financials, but we do have time for the Tesla Robotaxi. So, what are your thoughts overall? Because I was a little disappointed.
I mean, it was exactly like you had called it, right? They took out the steering wheel. Um, I mean, the design is very Tesla design.
Hmm.
I'll say. I think for me the most interesting surprise was the bus.
Yes, that
The
was
bus
very
thing
interesting.
was really interesting, and for me, I think that makes a lot more sense because I think if we're going to solve transportation, it has to be on a larger scale, like sort of more mass
Hmm.
scale. And I think that's what they're trying to address there. I don't know. Issue with mass transit and buses is not everyone's going from the same point A to point B at the same time.
Yes, that's 100%. And I get so many people like commenting on my posts are like, "Oh, like why are you sharing these electric cars when the future is like all these buses and stuff?" And it's like, "All right, like I'm not sure where you live, but my school is 130 miles away from where I live. And even like my commute like to school to classes is a pretty good distance every day, and it's like just having buses in rural America and relying on public transit in rural America is not possible. And people need to stop thinking that it is. Obviously, in cities, it's totally different. Like if you live in New
Yes.
York, you're totally fine on public transit, and it's a lot more convenient actually. But for like a good majority of America, is you need a car.
Yeah, you
And
need your own personal vehicle. But
yes,
that's where I think there's between the need and where we need to go in terms of pathway from like both a technology and a regulation standpoint, it's a long way. I mean, it
yes,
was definitely the demo was an extremely controlled environment.
hmm,
So, I mean, to me, the technology, the autonomous technology didn't really seem too novel to me because it seemed like it was just like the normal Tesla auto drive, except there was no way for humans to interfere, right, in the
yeah,
vehicle. And I'm curious to see if they can actually get this out on the roads, right?
hmm,
I think regulators will have a really hard time if there's no physical way to intervene within the car.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean the only
Because
way
even
that
like a
I could,
Waymo, it's like
yeah,
there's still a steering wheel in there, and it's like I
yeah,
guess if something crazy happens
someone can sort of reach over and yeah.
or something, I don't know. But yeah, with Robotaxi, it's like maybe there should be like an emergency stop button or something. I don't know.
I mean the best compromise that I could see is sort of what already happens with Waymos and Cruises and some of the other autonomous ones, which is human intervention remotely ported in, right? Like
Hmm.
you have to sort of show a robust way for, you know, the car to basically say we need human intervention right now, and then someone just becomes a remote driver from elsewhere, and
Hmm.
takes over. I don't think he really mentioned too much of that because he's really foreseeing a completely autonomous future, which is great. But I just don't think cities are ready to take that risk. I'd be very surprised if there's a city that Elon could convince that would go full robotaxi and exactly what they're looking for.
Yes. I think it would probably, like, just my hunch, it would probably be a city not really like San Francisco. I mean,
No.
Waymo seem to do well because just San Francisco, just lots of fog, it's a very interesting city in terms of the geography, like lots of hills. So, like, I'm thinking more of like a Phoenix Mesa area. That would
Yes.
be like my best guess. Waymo also conveniently operates there. But yeah, no, I just think it's a really interesting product. But, like, from my perspective, if this Robotaxi was also just a normal car that had normal charging capabilities, not wireless only, just a
Mhm.
vehicle that you could buy. I don't even care if it has back seats. Back seats would be nice for more space. But even if it's two seats, that car, 25 to 30K with a steering wheel, maybe like 250, 300 horsepower, 50-ish kilowatt hour battery, that would be such a cool car. And I think everyone would rush out to buy it. And I think
I
Tesla
agree.
not doing that is just missing out on such a huge market.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would appeal a lot more to a lot more people. But
Hmm.
I guess it's Elon, right? Like Elon doesn't really do too many things that are straightforward or easy. Yeah, I may be optimistically 50-50 on whether or not this
Hmm.
thing actually comes to fruition. I don't know if the end of 2026 is actually real. Probably more like 28 or probably closer to 2030 if it does happen,
Hmm.
just because of the regulation. And, you know, I think I mean, a really strong indicator. I don't think they've published any numbers in terms of the reservations, but typically like Tesla reservations is a good indicator of whether or not they have a hit. I think the Cybertruck actually did pretty well, even though that was pretty controversial.
Hmm.
All their other vehicle launches tend to have really good pre-order reservation numbers. I'd be curious to see what the Robotaxi numbers are. I have a feeling it's not it's not that high. I mean, personally, Andrew, would you put in a pre-order for a Robotaxi right now?
Maybe.
Okay.
I like to drive, and I think, and plus, whenever this thing comes out, there's gonna be so many good options, especially used. Like, I bet you I could probably get an Audi e-tron GT for 25K at that price, or at that
Hmm.
time, which is
Yeah.
2028. I could probably get something really cool. Yeah, I mean, if this thing, because Tesla has steer-by-wire technology, I don't think it would be that hard for them to make a version with a steering wheel, side view mirrors, just like everything that a normal car has. And it just kind of infuriates me that they don't, because it would be such, if we could have an electric coupe with butterfly doors that looks cool like it does for that price, it would be such an awesome vehicle. And it would be like a Mazda Miata that's electric, that's affordable. That would be
Hmm.
the perfect car. I would literally put a pre-order in right now. I would want it so bad, but alas, that's not going to happen. Oh no, maybe
Yeah.
it does. Maybe they changed their minds.
I mean, the Cybertruck did go through a lot of changes from the original, right? The dimensions
Hmm.
are a little bit different, and some of the stats are a bit
But
different.
still has a
So
steering wheel.
it does, and actually a pretty innovative one at that, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I can see what Elon's trying to do and where he's going with it. I'm more pessimistic on, I think, on the government and the need for policies and people in general maybe not feeling the most safe about having these on their streets.
Yeah.
The NIMBYism is strong in San Francisco.
Hmm.
So
Definitely.
yeah, I do think it would probably be somewhere else. I'd be curious to see how it plays out. And I'm still not sure whether or not the utilization when you're not there, right? Like you can rent it out to other people.
Hmm.
If people will actually catch on to that and people would actually do that. I'm still not sure in my mind how that would work. I have to think about it a little bit more and maybe take some more ayahuasca or whatever kind of drugs Elon's taking these days.
Yeah. I don't know. Interesting product. Yeah, I guess we'll just leave it at that because like there was also like no information about its tech specs, so
Yeah,
it's a little unfortunate. We'll have to
yeah,
see though. In
yeah,
2026, 2026, we'll see. I mean, it
yeah,
might actually. I honestly don't know. So yeah, I
yeah.
guess that's a
We'll see.
discussion on the Robotaxi.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. The bus though, I
Yes,
would love to take a ride in that bus. That bus looked pretty cool.
that
That
would
looked
be
like
pretty
the next
cool.
level. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. It seems like something I never watched Tron, but based on what
Yeah,
vibes, it just kind of seems like that little cyber futuristic. I don't know. It's pretty cool. It would
for sure.
be definitely an
Actually,
interesting product.
I could see that bus being a huge hit in Las Vegas.
I bet.
I could see that being a huge hit in Las Vegas. So, go test out that market.
Y-
They got a Tesla Gigafactory out there, so,
We'll see.
yeah. But
And
anyways, do you
yeah,
want to go
so
to the EV deal of the week?
I was just about to. I think that'll be a great way to wrap up the podcast. And considering my laptop is at 9% battery, I think it'll make it though because
Okay.
it's got pretty good battery life. But yes, so today's EV or this week's EV of the week is going to be the Nissan Ariya. And this is a super underrated car. And it's so underrated that I recently wrote an article on Inside EVs. And by recently, I mean just a few hours ago. And it'll be up sometime this week. So you can see more of my thoughts on this vehicle. The Nissan Ariya, I think, is an incredibly cool car. It is very underrated. But I mean, just look at these prices. This is a 2023 Nissan Ariya Engage. 9,000 miles on the odometer, 9,700, whatever. 22.3. And if we look at the Carfax, can you still see my screen?
Yeah.
Yep.
Hmm.
Okay. We click on the original window sticker, which actually won't load, but take my word for it. This car was $48,000 brand new, and you can literally get it right now, 9,700 miles on the odometer for 22.3. I think that's just insane. It makes 335 horsepower. Range is about 205 miles, and that's a little optimistic. It's probably going to be more like 170, 180 in real world. Range isn't its strong suit, but it's still pretty decent. But I mean,
Yeah,
this
and
is
it's a nice, useful car overall. I mean, I've heard it's basically like a Nissan Rogue in terms of like dimensions, right?
mhm,
And clearance and all that sort of thing. And the build looks pretty like decent quality.
100%.
I think this just goes to show Nissan's investment in the Leafs early on and making EVs is starting to pay off with these Arias right now. I mean, I think it maybe doesn't have the same brand staying power that Mercedes has, but they are known for quality vehicles, and I think the Arias, I think you're right. This is a great deal.
I mean,
Um,
and look at this, especially when you get those black wheels on it and with that
yeah.
black paint, I think it looks so sick. And here's the crazy thing about this car. I just can't stop looking at it. It's a really nice looking car. But here's the thing. People are like, okay, well, this is a base model. That's not great. No, but here's the thing. This car comes as standard with adaptive cruise control, lane centering. So it's basically like base autopilot, that sort of thing. It has an illuminated Nissan badge. That's standard feature. And then you get leatherette seats that are heated in the rear as well. So heated front and rear
Wow.
seats, heated steering wheel, a power sliding center console. The center console will move back and forth. And these are all standard features. And it actually has a six speaker, which doesn't sound too great, which doesn't sound great on paper, but I've heard the audio system is really good even on the base model. So basically, you're getting all this stuff for a car that's like a
It's a
mid-level
premium.
Nissan Kicks is the same price, brand new. It's
Yeah.
like, what are you gonna
It's
get?
a
You can get
premium.
Nissan.
It's a premium car overall, but you're getting it for what, 20, less than 25K, 23K. That's
Yep, and I
yeah.
think the craziest version of this. So if we look here and we just filter to, for some reason the trims don't really work well on cars.com. But if we want to look at like the all-wheel drive one, go to drivetrain, it's cooled seats. So the Platinum Plus model,
Oh, they got
like
ventilated seats. That's
yeah, so
nice.
this has Napa leather ventilated seats. This does automatic lane changes on the highway because it's a high trim level one.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
I don't know what else you want to ask for in a car that's this price point. Look, I mean, under 9,000 miles on the odometer, 389 horsepower, panoramic glass roof. I mean, this is, I think, probably one of, if not the best electric car deal on the market right now. And it's such an underrated car.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I mean, all those things, the Napa leather, the ventilated seats, all the automations, that's typically coming in like an $80,000 car,
Yes,
right?
100%. I mean,
Um,
like,
s
I'm going to say this is going to be a hot take. I will buy this, or I would buy this over a used Audi e-tron just for the sole fact that I know this thing's going to be a little bit more reliable and it has virtually all the same features, maybe except for the massaging seats, but I think you got to get the top level e-tron for that. But like, this has literally the same options as like a Audi e-tron Premium Plus, which is crazy. And I would assume, I mean, maybe the build quality is not quite up to Audi's level, but like, I mean, this
it's
is
Nissan.
a
It's still
really
pretty solid.
luxurious car. I mean, it's
Yeah.
basically an Infinity
Yeah.
with what you're getting in this vehicle. So
Yeah.
I think the
Absolutely.
Ariya is a deal that I think too many people are sleeping on it, and it's a really good car. Yeah, it's kind of overpriced, brand new, but it's like the fact that you can get you can get under 10,000 mile examples for like 22 is insane to me. And I guess if I didn't buy my Model 3 this summer, I probably would have considered this because it's like that's one heck of a deal.
There's still time.
Yeah, I guess if I get diminished value back on my Model 3, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I like my Model 3 though, so we'll see.
Well, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, no, I think that's a great deal of the week. Great share, Andrew. Can't wait to read your article.
Thank you. Yep, I'm excited for that one. I that was the most fun I ever had writing an article in recent times. I just think it's a really good deal, and it's because I've written about other cars before, like the Subaru Solterra, and I'm like, well, yeah, it's cheap, but it's like also not a great car. But it's like this is a really good car. It's just a little too expensive, brand new, and now you can get them for insanely low amounts of money compared to what they were brand new. I mean, we're looking at like over 50% depreciation in 1 year. That's
Again,
insane.
yeah. I mean that goes back to the double-edged sword, right? From when we started. EV depreciation is real, but that just means that you can benefit a ton buying used. So,
Yep,
for sure, for sure. Cool.
definitely. So I think that
Do
was
you
a
want
good note
to?
to end this on.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
I think for anyone who's interested, buy a used electric car. It'll be a pretty good deal. And till we speak next week, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of new EV news around then. So thanks for
Great.
listening.
See you.